Montreal makes multiple perfect sneaky signings for the team, bringing in another Quebec native who is a checking forward who dominated the AHL for depth, and another goalie to fulfill Cayden Primeau's void that is left now, with Montreal having the 4 goalies for this season, having more AHL depth, some perfect flexibility for call-ups. We get to break down Sammy Blais and Kaapo Kahkonen, what they bring to the team, and why Kent Hughes just keeps on cooking, all coming up on this episode of Habs Digest. And before we get into it, hit that free subscribe button, guys. We are here to cover all the latest signings, what it means for Montreal, trades, all that great stuff. So hit the free button down below. You won't regret it, I promise. The hat's on crazy. Just put it on for this video. Let's dive into it. Now, the first things first, we got to talk about Sammy Blais, a Quebecois native again. I mean, we went and got Zachary Bolduc. We drafted a couple Quebecois. We're bringing in Sammy Blais. 1 year, one way, $775,000 deal. Now, for those of you thinking, one way, what is he going to play in the NHL? All one way means is that the pay is set no matter whether you play in the AHL or NHL. So basically it just means that Sammy Blais is getting $775K whether we like it or not, even if he plays the whole season in the AHL, which, well, this past year, that is exactly what he did. Now, Sammy Blais, for those of you that know him, he's had a long, nice career in the NHL. He was drafted 11 years ago, former 6th round pick. He's never had a season with more than 9 goals, but he did have 20 points in 31 games in his time with St. Louis in 2022-23. So there is some pretty interesting upside there, but this is not what Montreal has brought in Sammy Blais for. Now, myself and Jesse, we're going to talk a bit later about the grander implications of Montreal's moves on day 1 of free agency here, July 1st. So stick around for that, but I'm going to focus more on the tangible. What is Sammy Blais? What does he bring to Montreal? Well, not Kaapo Kahkonen. Sammy Blais here, the big thing with him, he's a checking forward. I mean, you can see here, he's 6'2", 206 pounds, and with the loss of Emil Heineman, the loss of some checking, we made up for some of it with a guy like Zachary Bolduc, but we went and got another former Blue, Sammy Blais, who had 194 hits in 53 games this past season, 238 hits in 71 games the year before. Now, not only does it replace a bit of the physicality that Heineman left behind, but with Michael Pezzetta signing in Toronto, which is still absolutely disgusting and hurts me to my utter core, Sammy Blais fills that need of physicality. And what I like about this is Sammy Blais is an AHL demon as well, because he won the Calder Cup with the Abbotsford Canucks this year. 40 points in 51 games, 19 points, 77 penalty minutes in 23 playoff games. He has that physical edge. He has that talent in the AHL. And that's always amazing. For a Montreal team that has so many young guys coming up through the system now, you all want someone in the AHL if that's where he's going to play, which it probably is, unless he's like the 13th forward for parts of the season, right? You want someone that can help protect the younger guys, go to bat for them, right? And that's exactly what Sammy Blais is going to be there in the AHL to do. He might play a handful of games in the NHL, it's very possible, but again, I wouldn't bank on that. It could fill a physicality role, like we said, maybe if Montreal, well, when we make the playoffs again this year, a guy like Sammy Blais could prove valuable to just have on the roster to kind of bring him up and do his work there. But, you know, he has some weird offensive upside, like from 20 points in 31 games to 7 points in 53. I wouldn't bank on it, right? To me, Sammy Blais is very much a depth move, but something that's really necessary for Montreal. Again, we non-tendered a guy like Raphael Harvey-Pinard, so we didn't extend him the qualifying offer. I don't think non-tender is the right word for that, but he's gone, right? Probably going to sign somewhere else. I don't know if he has already, but to bring in someone that can replace that kind of energy, Sammy Blais to me is a perfect fit. And, you know, it does send a grander message for the Montreal Canadiens organization, but I think we'll cover that in a video just a bit later. But I really like the Sammy Blais signing. Again, it's a depth move, but always these sneaky moves do matter, especially when you're losing some talent in Laval. There's a lot of turnover down there, and adding extra physicality to a team that lost some in Heineman, yeah, I think it's a good idea. So let me know your thoughts on Sammy Blais down below. As we move to the other guy, now I'm very, very familiar with Kaapo Kahkonen. For those of you that don't know, I also follow the Minnesota Wild quite closely as my second team. Distant second, though. I'll keep that in mind. But Kaapo Kahkonen came up with the Minnesota Wild a number of years ago, and I was actually very curious what Montreal was going to do after trading away Cayden Primeau's rights to the Carolina Hurricanes, because that clearly left a hole with Connor Hughes, our backup in Laval last year, to Jakub Dobeš, heading over to Switzerland on a 5-year deal. We were left with just Jakub Dobeš, who's an RFA right now, by the way, Samuel Montembeault, and Jacob Fowler. And I was like, okay, that's fine, but we still need a veteran here somewhere, whether in the NHL or the AHL, to kind of bolster this goalie rotation, because just having 3 like AHL to NHL caliber goalies in the system really won't fly that much, right? We have like Luke Cavalin, who was the Trois-Rivières goalie, who, yeah, they won the Kelly Cup, but like, yeah, I don't know, a veteran presence was needed, and Kaapo Kahkonen is exactly that. Right now, Puckpedia has him slotted in behind Monty, but that's only because Jakub Dobeš hasn't been officially signed as of the making of this video. Wouldn't surprise me if Kahkonen cracked the NHL this year and Jakub Dobeš went back to the AHL, but that's hard to say because Dobeš was so good. Honestly, I'm tempted to say Dobeš has this spot, and Kahkonen is very much an AHL guy. Because, like, Kahkonen has a bit of a nice resume, there it is, in the NHL. Like, he's had some pretty good seasons. I'll make that even bigger for you. Like, his tenure with 6 games with the Devils and .923 save percentage, but he's bounced around so many teams, and he's played in the AHL a lot this season. He was in the NHL for a while, but it's like he just couldn't get his footing. Kind of like Primeau is like, he started off pretty hot, .913 save percentage in 5 games, .902 as the full-time backup for Minnesota back in 2020, 2021, then a .910 save percentage, .916, but then it started to fall off a bit, and then this year, 1 game with Colorado just couldn't cut it. Then he was traded from the Colorado Eagles, went to the Jets organization, Manitoba Moose, finished off with the Charlotte Checkers, where he had a decent playoffs. The thing for me, Kaapo Kahkonen is very much the guy that you stick in Laval with Jacob Fowler. Now, the problem is it's a pretty hefty price, $1.15 million for a guy that if you only see him in the AHL, that's tough, but 1.15 I think is exactly, or at least very close to the amount that you can actually bury in the AHL. So if his contract is fully in the AHL, it won't count against Montreal's cap. And I think that's a very strategic move here because you can bury, I think it's up to 1.2 or maybe $1.3 million of cap in the AHL, so the NHL team doesn't have to pay it. And I think that's exactly why they gave him this amount of money. Because let's be honest, like, the dude has a decent resume. He's played a decent bit in the NHL, and he's been a pretty good AHL goalie. His time with the Moose this year wasn't great, but he had a good playoffs with Charlotte in 18 games. He was very solid. And we saw him, right, go up against our Laval Rocket, who eliminated us, and he was very solid there. 6'2", 217. He has, like, I don't know, I don't want to say upside, but he has that potential to just be, like, a very solid tandem goalie in Laval. If you're not ready to give Jacob Fowler the reins right away, Kaapo Kahkonen is the perfect guy to put alongside him. And, again, I think this tells us a lot. Again, the term of the deal also tells us a lot about what we're planning going forward. I think this is planning to be Jacob Fowler's net. We're just doing 1 year at a time. But again, a bigger breakdown of Bolduc, of Sammy Blais, of Kaapo Kahkonen is coming up later. But to me, these are just 2 sneaky moves that need to be done. Do they have NHL upside? Maybe, but probably not. They're a lot more so on the depth side, where if Montreal needs a call-up for a goalie, if there's an injury, you have a guy who has a long NHL list of experience where you don't need to rely on Jacob Fowler. You need some physicality to come into the lineup. You have an injury to a Montreal Canadian. You have a guy who's just not playing that great. Sammy Blais has a ton of NHL experience, and he is a physical grinder. He can go out there, knock other people on their butts, just like Michael Pezzetta did this last year, and he can still go get you 50, 60, 70 points in the AHL. These moves, while not flashy, are very sneaky good for depth in the organization, not only in Laval, but for Montreal. So leave your thoughts on both these signings down below, because that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. Keep your eyes out for more stuff coming later. There's a lot of stuff going down with Montreal right now, and we are here to cover it all. I've been your host, Josh Gosse, and I'll catch you in the next one.